All right, what's up, guys? Here with my buddy Ray today. Thanks for coming along.
Yeah, totally, my pleasure.
We kind of want to talk about books, reading, self-education, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think just bringing up a few of our books that have really kind of made an impact on our lives would be something kind of fun to talk about, and share.
And there's some crazy stats out there where the average American reads less than one book a year, and then the average CEO reads 60 books a year.
Yeah.
So I always think about that. I'm like, where do I want to be in life? Do I want to be the CEO? Or do I want to be the average American? And for me, I want to learn. They say readers are leaders, right?
Yeah.
And from your point of view, have you found it's made a dramatic difference?
Yeah, and I would say even more than just like the CEO and being a leader and all that. I would say just like in general for like being like a happy person, understanding the world and all the things and why you like this and why you don't like that and why you're unhappy and why, it dives more into the whys and gives you more of that satisfaction and, helps you understand where you want to maybe, take your life to.
Gives you an understanding from different people's point of views, perspectives, experiences.
Yeah.
And it might educate you that money's not everything, or the importance of health.
Yeah.
Or if you're dealing with emotional something really bad, this is how other people have been through it and dealt with it. Or no matter how bad you think things are, something you've read is a million times worse.
Yeah, for sure.
And it gives you true perspective, right?
Yeah, totally.
And there's an example in Richard Branson's book, and he's talking about when he started Virgin Airlines. And he's saying that British Airlines, who was obviously the dominant airline, the one who was there first, spent 10 years trying to put him under.
Yeah.
They hired staff who'd ring up and cancel the Virgin Airlines flights.
Yeah.
They would sabotage him for years. So no matter what I'm going through in my little business, I always remember that, hey, this is nothing compared to what other people have been through and succeeded through.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives you real true perspective.
Yeah, even people that, we talk about, I hear it a lot, I don't have time, or I don't have the money, or, I don't have this. Everyone talks about like these lack of resources, but then there's people out there, like I just was reading a story recently about a guy who his family was in some country where everything got destroyed. His dad died, and he happened to be like really wealthy there, but they escaped and came to America with like $100, and here he is now. He was in his 30s, a successful real estate developer, making millions of dollars. And, you hear those stories and like, he really came here, he knew nobody, he didn't know the language, he had all these things against him. But here he just because I think personally, because his dad was already wealthy, he already understood a lot about how just money works.
Yeah.
And that alone, it was the knowledge that gave him the tools to kind of, create the wealth that he did when he got here. So, and he found the opportunities because he can see the opportunities because he's learning about where the opportunities are, right? So that's the key.
Yeah.
Is your perspective. People talk about mindset, but I'd say it's even a little deeper than that. I think mindset, people get confused of just, like the desire, the motivation to be excited to do something. And I think mindset goes a little deeper. It's more like the philosophy you have on the world itself. And
it's like they always say America's the land of opportunity, and I don't think most Americans get that because you're born in America.
We're so lucky to be here.
I don't think people realize how lucky they are.
Yeah.
If you're literally born in this country and you got health on your side, you're so blessed.
Yeah.
Like we're the same age. Like you're 43, I'm 42.
Yep.
If we were living in India or China or North Korea or 2/3 of the world right now, our life would be probably pretty crappy compared to what it is here.
Yeah.
And they say that most immigrants that come to this country come in so hungry and they succeed. And I think it's because, kind of like you touched on, is they appreciate what they've got at their fingertips that they didn't have before.
Yep.
It's different for me because I came from Australia. Australia and America are very similar. But if I came from Russia and now I'm living here, now I've got complete freedom. The harder I work, the further I go in life.
Yeah.
What's my excuse? I got no excuse.
Yeah.
And I'm going to appreciate that so much more than someone who's just born into this who just takes it for granted. And I think takes it for granted is really true. And I don't like saying it, but I feel like most people do because they don't appreciate how bad they could have had it and how good they do have it today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts, right?
Yeah, it is nuts. and the fact that nobody wants to go and learn anything new and read any books and grow. It's interesting to me that's such a
it's easy to be the victim. Hey, my parents didn't teach me how to make money. I don't know how to lose weight. I'm a victim. The world's against me. But no one ever's like, hey, pick up a book and start educating yourself.
Yeah.
And if you want to go to college, but you don't necessarily have to. I don't know how to start a business. You're getting into real estate investing. What's the first thing you did? You pick up the real estate book and you started reading, and you haven't stopped.
Yep.
Nor will you ever stop, right?
Yep.
And every single book you read puts you that little bit further and helps you. And when something bad goes wrong, you got something to relate to. When you're not sure where to go, you got something to relate to. Mm-hmm. It's priceless.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's free. It's accessible. I can't afford a book, but you got access to a library. You got access to YouTube.
There's no excuse. How much is a library card?
Yeah,
I think it's free. Like,
and then you got
maybe it's $1.
Free videos like this, right?
Yeah.
So there's literally no excuse. It's just, do you want it bad enough? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. How old were you, and what was the first book that you read that kind of like changed everything for you?
So the first book I read that was important to me, it was the Tao Te Ching, which is like a small book of a bunch of ancient poems from China that were kind of more like philosophical poems, on kind of just life, the duality of life and just different things. Now, that book, I wouldn't say it didn't affect me in the sense where like it set me on this different path, other than it made me way curious about other philosophies, right, and other things in life. So that book in particular just kind of started me, I guess, on the path of wanting to learn more.
And this goes back to that saying, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Yes.
It's so true, right?
Yes.
The more I read, I'm like, damn, I really don't know much.
Yeah, and I think with that book, it was written like 2,000 years before the Bible or something crazy like that. So I was just like, how these guys, like, they already understood so much, and here I am, in this, this time, and I feel so dumb, like I don't know anything at all. And so that really kind of made me,
it humbles you too, right?
It does, totally.
Yeah.
So I felt like, man, maybe I'm just not thinking enough. So I just started learning, and it's not that I wasn't thinking, it's that I just wasn't curious. And I think the more curious you are, the more
you start critically thinking, and you start questioning things, and everything you've been brought up to believe, like, why do I believe this?
Yeah.
Does this make it fact?
Is it true?
If you grow up a religion, you can like be, I'm not saying brainwashed, but if you're told one thing and you take that for fact and you never question it, how do you know?
Yeah.
I grew up with that religion, but I got to make sure I question, is religion true?
Yep.
If you grow up with religion, is religion not true? It's up to you to make that decision, do your educated research.
Yep. So I think, and you're right, everything that I've questioned that was not true got weaker, and everything that I questioned that was more true got stronger.
That's crazy, right?
That's just the way it is, and you brought up religion and stuff. So one of the books that changed my lives a lot, that really sent me on a different path, that really kind of opened my whole world up, was a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it was called No Death, No Fear. And it's a Buddhist book just about dying, death, mortality, and kind of understanding, your place in this world that we live in and that we understand at this current time. And that book actually was the reason that I actually went and stayed at a monastery with monks. And the time I spent there has never left, like me.
Gotcha.
It went so deep, like in my subconscious and to my core.
How old were you?
I was in my early 20s when I went to the monastery.
That's pretty crazy. That's
cool. It was.
Yeah.
really cool, and it was such an experience that even to this day, like, I feel like it was just yesterday that I was there.
What was the biggest thing you got out of that?
It was when anything felt uncomfortable or I felt any kind of emotion arise, it was being able to be aware of it.
Before you act on it, or just in general? Just in general.
Gotcha. Just like I learned how that there's your awareness, and then there's another awareness behind that can watch your thoughts happening, which is a really weird perspective to have. But because you basically, when you go to the monastery, we would just be dumped into their daily routine. So I was waking up at 5 a.m. I was going to the monastery and meditating for an hour, and we did some stuff. We had breakfast, we went for a walk, we maybe meditated again, or and it was like just that time and doing that regimen of just all that meditating and learning and the things we talked about. It was quickly apparent that there's a deeper consciousness that's inside of us that can watch what's happening.
That's crazy.
It is weird. It's weird to think about.
It's crazy at that younger age you accepted the fact of, because most people are like ego, they're going to shut something like that down, right? Oh, that's stupid.
I was really curious though. I was really curious.
I like what you said, it piques your curiosity to learn more.
Yeah.
I can tell you how many things I've implemented in my life from reading something or listening to something, and that's just opened a whole new
interest.
A whole new rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I grew up and I'm not dissing my parents or the way I grew up, but I grew up, go to school, get good grades, get a good job, work 40 hours a week for 40 years, and then retire.
Yeah.
And that's the way that life goes.
Yeah.
And when I was 21, I had a girlfriend at the time, and her dad gave her this book. And then some reason I read this book, and it was Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. I feel like most people who read have read that at some point, or it's on their to-do.
I'd say that was it's in my top 3. I probably would have said that book second.
And what that book did for me, it flipped everything I knew on its head.
Yes.
And it changed my whole trajectory. Like the whole way, like I thought I was doing this, and now I realized there's another way.
Yep.
And that was the best thing I ever did. And that kind of piqued my curiosity. It showed me there was another way. And after that, I was just obsessed.
Yeah.
I was just, what's the next book? What's another book? What's another book?
Yeah, that book for me was the first book that kind of like, when you're growing up, and I grew up very poor, Hispanic family, we didn't really have anything. I remember times in my life where, when we would just scrounge for just noodles inside the pantry and just warm up noodles and put salt and pepper, and we would do whatever we could to eat. And so, like, that, I never understood the rich people, rich life. I just always thought that was just some other world that existed that was not part of mine. That would never be a part of mine.
Nor will you ever get to that.
I would never get to that. But that book was the first book that kind of pulled the curtain back a little bit, and it felt like I looked into what it was like to be rich, and it made sense. Oh crap! I can go there. I can actually. There is a way that I can get to that life.
Kind of gave you permission.
It did. It gave me permission.
Like the 4-minute mile, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. It was the 4-minute mile.
Yeah.
That whole thing when, he ran below 4 minutes and then everyone else did, right?
Yeah.
It was like that.
Tony Bannister, right?
Yeah.
He ran the mile under 4 minutes, and then next week 29 people did it.
Yes.
Never been done in history.
Yes.
So yeah, it's giving you a blueprint, and it's giving you permission that, hey, that if this person can do it, other people can do it.
Yeah, and I'm a part of a lot of different investor communities with, on short-term rentals and long-term rentals and apartments and multifamilies and all this stuff. And that book always comes up. It's now just kind of called the Purple Book, and people call it the Purple Book and refer to it as the Purple Book. It's like the Bible, but it's really just Rich Dad Poor Dad is what they're talking about.
Yeah, so. And if you haven't read it, I highly suggest you read it.
100%.
If you can't afford it, you can borrow it. I'll give you my copy.
Yeah.
If you jump on YouTube, it's free on there. There's a million different ways of finding that book.
100%. And even recently, I just listened to something Ray Dalio was talking about, who's a big owner of hedge funds and stuff. I think he's the richest guy that owns the richest hedge fund. Anyways, he was talking about debt, and how good debt is when you buy an asset or you buy something that actually makes enough money to cover the debt and pays you money. That's a good debt. And a bad debt is like when you buy a really expensive car that you're just paying, right? And paying. Those are bad debts. And all those bad debts is what ends up inflating everything, and making things more expensive, whereas the good debts actually increase the incomes of everybody. Because if I own a property, for example, and it's making money, well, I'm going to be paying cleaners, I'm going to be paying these people, and I'm, all of a sudden there's more money to pay more people to do more things. Whereas the other things go around is, when you're paying for your expensive car and it's not making you any money, well, it's become more expensive. So automatically you're making things inflated.
And that ties into the rat race, right?
Yes.
And the rat race, meaning 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
Which scares the absolute crap out of me.
Yeah.
And that could be someone who works at Starbucks, or that could be a doctor. So no matter how much money someone's making, they're buying nicer cars, they're getting a bigger mortgage, they're wearing nicer clothes, and they're living above their means. So they're stuck. So if they ever, like job, J-O-B, just over broke is the acronym for that. Have you heard that one?
No, I like it.
So just over broke, meaning if you lose your job, 80% of Americans are stuck.
Yeah.
They can't lose their job. They haven't got the freedom. They got to put up some crappy boss telling them what to do, who they hate, because they're buying stuff they can't afford to impress people they don't like, and they're stuck on this rat race. And it scares the hell out of me. And I've been there, and I'm sure you've been there too, right?
Yeah.
It sucks. You don't have freedom, you don't have money, you're stuck.
Yeah, you're just worried, like, that if all these things rely on other factors, right? Not on your own skills and values. That's the part that I think is scary. And once you get to, if you learn enough and you grow enough, and I don't say you just read a million books and then you're going to be able to dominate the world. You got to read the books and then apply the things. You got to go do the things that are in these books. Like if I read a bunch of investing books but I never did anything about it, I would never. There's things that you just cannot learn. You have to go and do them.
I feel like that's with everything.
That's with everything. If you want to be a high performing athlete, you can't just read a book. You got to go and do all the practices and do the work and put in the lifts and put in the reps. And it's the same thing with being a great investor. You can't just read a bunch of books and then show up and be awesome. You got to go put in the work. You got to fail. You got to maybe not make so much money on like 3 or 4 deals. You got to learn all the stuff, the little nuances that you just can't learn. You just have to go out there and do it. So
there's a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Have you ever read it? So my favorite quote comes from that book, and I read that book years ago, and it's to read and not to do is really not to read. To know and not to do is really not to know at all.
Yeah.
So, and I always talk about this. It goes back to, I was a personal trainer. I had a client, he was 400 pounds. He was obese. He knew more about dieting than I did. Here I'm sitting with a 6-pack, mid-20s, looking amazing. He knows more about dieting than I did. But what's the point of knowing that unless you apply it?
Yeah.
So I'm a huge believer is 50% is learning, 50% is getting out there and doing it.
It might even be more just...
Yeah, might even be more. Yeah. That's just the way I kind of put it out there.
And the reason I say this is because I know people that have never read an investing book in their lives, but they have many properties.
Oh, yeah. They're killing it, right?
Crushing it, yeah. And they just kind of
just taking action.
They just showed up and they just did it. They put in the money and they put in the work, and then they learned, and they failed a bunch of times, probably more than they needed to, but they just kept doing it. And then they figured it out.
Jump in with 2 feet. Like Steve Harvey says that. Like jump in with 2 feet.
Yeah.
Like jump in and commit. Cut your safety nets. Burn your bridges.
Yeah. Burn the boats. Like
burn
the
boats.
Yeah.
Like commit. And the biggest thing I find with reading, it's not. I wouldn't say it necessarily makes you smarter. It makes you more knowledgeable. It gives you more awareness. So I know a lot of stats about a lot of things from reading. So I know like 52% of people go to college, drop out.
Yeah. I
know the average car loan is $500 a month over 96 months. I know the average wage in America. And when you start to be in the top 1% in this country, you've only got to make $400,000 a year. So when you start to learn all this information, you start to go, hey, I drive $6,000 Camry paid in cash, which makes me $500 richer per month over 96 months than the average American.
Yeah.
So understanding that makes it okay for me to buy that crappy car. I live in a small unit, which is super cheap, but I know that by doing that, I can save more money because I don't care where I live. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm good.
Yeah.
Knowing that I've got bigger, better goals by saving this money and what I can do with this money. Or the fact that I can jump on a plane tomorrow and go wherever I want and not have to worry about money and not have to worry about a boss telling me I can't do it.
Yep.
So I've created freedom for myself by living below my means, but working hard at reading, trying to make as much money as possible, and making that gap as big as possible.
Yeah. Totally. I agree with that. And I mean, I also think, just to kind of add on to what you're saying, is sometimes though, like there's things that we want that that we just enjoy, that has nothing to do with impressing people or anything like that, right? Like, for example, I love cars. So for me, like, some people would be like, I don't know why you'd buy this expensive, Porsche GT3 or whatever. And it's like, well, I'm not buying it for you. Like, I actually really love it. I love the history of it. I love the performance. Like, I was a racing instructor for many years. So, like, I just have a deeper relationship with cars in general. So, like, for me, when I get into it, it's not just getting into a car. I'm like getting into this thing that's like history, and like it's like a work of art.
You happy,
it makes me happy, yeah.
But are you buying it day one, or is that a goal and that's something you're patient with?
Yeah, it's something that I'm patient with, but it's also like, I mean, I've had an Audi R8, like I've had those things and I made it work, and I've always figured out a way to kind of have those cars in my life. Necessarily, maybe it was making money, maybe it wasn't, but always figured out a way to do it. But I do believe sometimes, you got to kind of, if you feel like that thing needs to happen, and maybe you need to go and get it so that you go and figure out a way to make more money.
Yeah, it's like a motivation thing, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like burning the boats. You're gonna get to the island, and you're gonna burn the boats, and
it's good to have motivation.
You're gonna go figure it out, because sometimes you can get stagnant with just like, I do agree with like living below your means, because we do, but at the same time, there's got to be a point where like you're still trying to like raise a vibration in your life, right? Like the whole goal is to like enjoy.
It's a balance for you, right?
Yeah, and bring in more experiences. So until you get to the point where you don't need to worry about it at all, of course, there's you still got to enjoy the ride.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I always think about, Gary Vee talks about this a lot. He goes, would you rather make $100,000 a year in a job you hate, or make $40,000 in a job that you love?
Yeah.
And I always think about that. Like, money is one thing, but happiness outweighs everything.
I agree with that. Yes.
Like happiness and health. Like, if your health is your wealth. If you haven't got your health and you got all the money, it's not going to do much for you.
Yeah.
Especially the way like America's going, everyone's dying early. And then being happy is everything. Like, not getting up and like, they say that 80% of lawyers hate what they do, but they do it for the money, and they make good money, and they work hard and they study hard, but they hate what they do.
Yeah, that's always weird. Yeah.
Which is crazy, right?
Yep.
So like, I'm a huge believer, and from reading, I've learned that find what you love to do, find a way you're getting paid for it.
Yep.
Full stop. And if you don't know how to get paid for it, read some books. Learn from other people. Listen to podcasts.
Well, I think I'm a good example of that, because I loved cars. I loved racing. I became a driving instructor for a racing school. So for many years, and now I eventually started traveling around, doing coaching, private coaching. I was in a race car, 5 days a week at least.
Getting paid for it,
Which is awesome. And it was awesome. And I really enjoyed it. But then, there comes a point where you're like, I kind of want something more. Like, you realize
the catch, right?
That is the catch. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's just self-awareness a little bit of like going, you know what? I like cars. I love driving them. Maybe what I really want to do though is just like drive them on my own by myself, and figure out other ways to like enjoy life and make money, and and create abundance and all that stuff. Because ultimately, I want to be able to give back and help people and share all these things that I've learned. And I can't just do that if I'm just selfishly like, off being a driving instructor somewhere, but I can't afford the time or money to go and do that stuff. So I want to have enough to give back, I guess. So what's another book maybe you've really, that stuck out to you?
There's so many. I
know there's so many, I guess. I have one in mind. Like, I can probably narrow it down to 3. I mean, I have that. It's hard, but
what are your top 3 books?
My top 3 was No Death, No Fear, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
It's funny, I'm not very familiar with, obviously Rich Dad Poor Dad, but the other 2 I'm definitely going to have to read.
Yeah.
And that's just quickly, anytime I meet somebody who reads, or I have clients, or first thing I do is like, what's your favorite book? Or what's the books that stand out? And they tell me, and I literally, on Audible, I buy it right there and then. It goes on my to read list. You just told me 2, and they were amazing.
That's
it's a
awesome.
sales book and Matthew McConaughey's book, and they were amazing.
Yeah.
I had a client here the other day. She was worth easy worth a couple $1,000,000. She tells me a book. I buy it then and then. I've already read it.
Yeah.
So taking action on those books too.
Totally. I agree. I've done the same thing when you've said some books and I went and just ordered.
Yeah, because if we've read like a couple hundred books and you get the best one, you're like, oh, cool. That saves me reading a couple hundred to find that one book.
Yeah. And when you go to search for books, you're like, wow, there's so many books. So it's nice to get some that have already been kind of read through and you know it's going to be pretty good.
What was the biggest thing you got out of your top 3 books, would you say?
They were all kind of different. That's probably why I put them in my top 3, because one was kind of more the financial side. Like you said, money's not everything, but it is a lot. Like it's a big portion of existence, right? So it's not everything, but even the Buddhists, you know, they don't have anything. They have zero, nothing. They have no money. They have just the one robe and a bowl. But they still need funding to keep everything going, right? Like, so if there's not somebody out there who's going to take the money and funnel some to them, the monasteries will go away. You know, they need money to exist. Like, they need someone to fix the toilets. They need someone to come and, you know, take care of the grounds and water the plants and build the buildings. Like, there's still stuff that has to happen. So without someone going out there in the world and making the money, you know, money's a big deal. And so that's why I think Rich Dad Poor Dad was a big one for me, is understanding, like, to really live in society and, you know, and really kind of make yourself well-rounded to really enjoy the life that we're here to live.
Yeah.
You're going to have to figure out a way to make some money. Even if it's a little bit, a lot, doesn't matter. That's going to be up to your goals, I guess.
It's you personally,
That's you
right?
personally.
Yeah.
And so that's what brings me to The Alchemist. The Alchemist was one of the first books that was like, hey, everyone's like different. Like everyone has, you know, and in the book it's a story. It's more of a metaphorical story.
Yeah.
So some people, I personally think you're either going to love the book and really get all the deep poetic metaphors that are going on and it'll resonate with you, or you're just not quite going to get it and you're going to think it's kind of a boring story.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
There's nothing wrong with that. For me, you know, I just, there's every time I read it, it's deeper than what I realized it was.
Gotcha.
Right, and I'm like, damn, it's so good.
There's so many things I want to touch on. One thing being, you can read a book and come back to it. I was literally having a conversation yesterday about it. You can read a book and then read it again a year later or 2 years later and get something completely different out of it, because you're in a different point in your life. Things have changed. There's different things going on.
Yeah.
And you don't remember reading that point, but that could be the most valuable point out of that book, because your life is different.
Yeah, and Buddhists, they talk about this all the time in all their readings, like, hey, you can only understand things to the level of where you are now. You'll read this book now and you'll read it later. You'll come to a Dharma talk, you know, and you'll sit and meditate, and your thoughts, and you can go into much deeper places later as your knowledge grows and your understanding grows.
Love it.
Yeah, and it'll just get deeper for you as you move along in life. If it doesn't and you're not, then that's a good sign that you probably need to slow down and and, you know, slow down.
I like
settle down.
A big thing for me is I grew up where we never talked about money. I don't know if you did too. Like, was money, if you don't have money or you don't have excess amount of money, it's never talked about.
The only thing I always heard was, we don't have any money. We can't afford that.
And then, we can't afford that. We don't have any money. It was never brought up at the dinner table.
Correct.
And people who had money, they're lucky. They inherited. They're drug dealers. They're this. They're that.
They're
Money's
bad people. Yeah.
Money is the root of all evil. And you can't tell me that doesn't limit you, and that makes you not want to chase money, and that kind of it constricts you, right?
Yeah.
And I was in that, and nothing against my family, but that's the way it was talked about. And it wasn't until I started reading that I was like, no, money isn't a bad thing. Money just makes you more of what you already are. If you're a good person, money makes you a better person.
Yep.
If you're a bad person, it's going to make you more of a dick.
That's what I think too, yeah.
And so by reading it goes back to that permission thing, right? It's okay if I want to make more money. It's okay if I want to achieve more. It's okay if I want to do better than what I think I should do.
It's okay to change your mind. Like, if you thought this is where you've been going for the last 10 years and you realize, I'm not going where I want to go. It's okay to go a different place. And
then a big thing too, it's okay to not care about other people's opinions and make mistakes and fail and ask questions, like you said. Because in school we get told to sit there and shut up and listen to what we're told, and that's fact.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm not dissing teachers, but if a teacher who's making 30 to 50 grand a year is limiting what I can do, I mean, why are we listening to teachers as far as financing and what we should do for a living? some of the dumbest people who take the most amount of action make the most amount of money. Full stop, right?
Yep.
And like, I went to school, I wasn't naturally good at school, I didn't really care, I didn't really get into it. Fitness was a big thing for me. Obviously I still do that, but it's like everyone learns different, everyone's got different goals, and the more you read, the more you realize it doesn't matter. To me, schooling is biggest, I wouldn't say a waste of time, but it's so outdated. And if you're not good at school, you're not going to be anybody. If you don't become a doctor, you're a nobody.
Yeah.
And I do photography, I do videography for work. I can make money, just as much money as a doctor, and I love what I do.
Yep.
And it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. So for me, being a father, with my daughter, if she wants to paint for a living, I'm like, go nuts. You just need to figure out how to get paid for it.
Yep.
I don't care what you do, as long as you're happy and as long as you're making as much money that you want to make. And I feel like that's all it needs to be.
I agree. And in The Alchemist, the story and why this book is so cool is he's just a shepherd. He has this dream, and he doesn't know what it's all about, that he needs to go to Egypt. He's never been to Egypt. Those times takes place a long time ago when people were still herding sheep to village to get them shaved to make money and stuff. That was their life. So obviously they only traveled certain areas. They never went across the country.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is ends up kind of just being, without spoiling the whole story, it's basically a metaphor kind of for everyone's got their own personal legend they got to live out, and it's not the same for everybody. However, you can meet people that are bakers, but they're really unhappy. You can clearly tell they're miserable, they hate their life, and maybe their dad was a baker and they took over the bakery or whatever. Yeah. And that's what they're doing, right? So that you start to, the book kind of goes through, you can tell when people are living their personal legend and when they're not. You can tell just by the way that they are in the moment, the way their energy is, the way they feel, the way they're living their life. You start to kind of see that. When you start living your personal legend, you'll start to see other people not living theirs and living theirs. You can see the difference. Yeah. At first you just say oh, that guy's unhappy, or this guy's really nice, or whatever. But after a while you start to see oh, they're not on their path, they're on their path. You start to see that.
Something I'm thinking about is if you're counting down to the weekend, you're in the wrong job.
Yep, totally.
And I look back to jobs I've had when I was in my early 20s, and I'm looking at the clock and I'm literally counting my life away.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for that clock to go faster. That's not living.
That is not.
You literally are wishing away your life.
Yeah.
And you're wishing away 5 days of your week, and the weekend comes, you get drunk on the weekend to mask the fact you hate your job.
Yeah.
That's not living. That sucks. I know what day it is, but it doesn't make any difference ever what day of the week it is.
It doesn't.
And I love that.
Well, I was reading right now I'm reading a book called 4,000 Weeks, A Mortal's Guide to Time Management.
I read that.
And it's really, really cool. But 4,000 weeks is the average lifespan. Did you know that?
No.
4,000 weeks.
That doesn't seem like a lot, does it?
It's not a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of...
Yeah.
That gives you some perspective,
Definitely gives you some perspective. I've already lived, I think, 3,200 weeks or something like that.
Yeah,
2,200 weeks or something like that. So I'm like, wait, 4,000 is the average, and I'm already halfway. I'm like, holy crap!
Yeah, we're definitely halfway.
Yeah,
if not further.
So you think about that stuff, and you're here, you're conscious. You're only going to be conscious for 4,000 weeks or so. And why not try to be the best you can and try not to do something with it? Why are you gonna wake up and wait for the weekend to show up? Literally you're just waiting for your next week to go, to tick down. That's crazy to me.
And another thing I think of, I obviously love Gary Vee, but he's the only thing you have on your deathbed is regret.
Yeah.
When you're old, the only thing you have is regret. The things you didn't do, the things you didn't try because you worried about Sarah Smith's opinion when you're 40. That's why you didn't start that business, or you didn't travel, or because you worry about someone's opinion who is not in your life anymore.
Even your own. Maybe you're just worried that you are too attached to the person you are currently to go be the person you need to be.
Changing your blueprint, right?
Yeah, because
who you are inside.
That I think is the hardest part. I think saying screw you to Sarah is probably not as hard as you personally having to actually become somebody else.
Accountable to yourself.
Because you have to actually become somebody else. You got to let go of the person you are now to become the thing that you need to become, to achieve that next thing. And
yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's hard.
There's a saying. It's like, as soon as you take full accountability for your life, everything that happens to you, everywhere where you are in life, it's on you.
Yeah.
If you are overweight, it's on you. If you're not making the money you want to make, it's on you. You can point your finger, be a victim, blame everybody else, but you are the only person who can change it.
Yep.
It's not your spouse's problem. It's not your parents' problem. It's you. And I think reading gives you the true understanding that if I want change, I've got to make a change.
Yep.
And that's going back to what you're saying, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So my favorite book is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
I downloaded that one. I haven't listened to it yet.
You haven't listened? So
because I downloaded, but I already had like 2 other ones that I needed to.
See, it's on you to do.
Yeah, I have to finish each one because I don't want to get involved with too many books at the same time. So
I could honestly say I probably read that book between 50 to 100 times.
Yeah.
And the main thing I like about that is it's people skills. And for me, people skills is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Being able to shut up and listen, remembering people's names, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. The only body who wants to hear you complain is your mortician or your doctor. So, I mean, but it's true, right?
It is true.
If someone complains to you, I switch off.
Yeah.
Especially as you grow more and more and you become a non-excuse type person, it's very hard to put up with other people's BS.
Yeah.
And I just don't stand for it. So that to me, that book is a staple, and it kind of goes back to, I've recommended it to some people and people are like, oh, that's manipulative, I don't like that, and other people are like, oh my god, that just changed my life.
Yeah.
So you got to find the right books for you.
Yeah.
And there's another one that you and I both really like, which is E-Myth.
Yes, that was a good one. That's a good one if you really want to like understand business and create a real successful business.
Understand leverage, right?
Leverage.
The ability to step out of a business.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I guess how to become the owner of the business and not just the employee in your business. Like.
Yeah. What do they say? Like the employee, the business owner, or the entrepreneur.
Yes.
The 3 levels, right?
Yes.
So meaning, if you're an amazing mechanic, it doesn't mean you can run a mechanic store.
Yes.
It's 2 different things.
Correct.
It's not even close to each other.
Yeah.
And understanding that, just as so many people who have got they're very good at a skill, but all of a sudden they think they can run a business. It doesn't work like that.
Yep.
Running a business involves what, right?
Yeah.
Like everything but being a mechanic.
Everything but being a mechanic. Yeah, totally. Having a good mechanic is great. Having a bunch of okay mechanics is fine. Like if you're good at business,
Yeah.
you can make that work. So if you're a good mechanic and you're going to open up your own shop, well, you're going to have to, and that book was so good for helping you prepare to like move into the next role that you're going to have to move into. Eventually, you're not going to, have to be there every day.
Yeah.
That's the goal, is for it to run itself. And
I was lucky enough to be, I got to film this guy. He's pretty close to being a billionaire. And the 3 things he says, you need to learn how to leverage people, time, or money. And you get that, right?
Yep.
So you want to explain that for me?
Sure. I mean, leveraging, let's start with money. That's probably the easiest one to kind of start leveraging initially. Let's say you have a car and you're paying a payment on it. Well, you can turn that into leverage if you put it on Turo and you start renting it out, and all of a sudden, instead of paying $500 a month for your car, it's actually making you like $5,000 to $1,000 a month. Well, voila, now you're leveraging that debt because there's probably a debt on it.
So that's just one little way.
That's one little way of just.
Yeah.
That's one way of, and I say it's a practical way of just taking something that's a negative and turning it into a positive in your life. Right? You have a house. Let's say you live by yourself. You have maybe a couple extra bedrooms. Well, rent a couple out if you can to somebody. Start getting
suck it up.
Suck it up. Yeah. Or move out, and maybe if you don't need to have this big house and live with someone else, and rent that place out. So do something like that.
Or invest your money, which would be another way of leveraging money, which is either shares like Bitcoin, crypto, or real estate.
Because for the most part, if you're going to buy like a short-term rental property, you're going to need 20% down. The bank's willing to give you 80% of the money. So if you can find a little, $200,000 property that you can even rent out for some kind of short-term rental profit, the bank's going to literally loan you 80%. And that, when you put that on the market and you're renting it out as a short-term rental, it's going to pay for itself. You're paying the loan off. leveraging all that, and you're making money on it on top of that, and you don't even have to be there. Like, you have nothing to do. You're just leveraging your money.
And touching on that, like, I can't not make enough money to save money, blah, blah, blah. That's when you need to cut your expenses down.
Yeah.
Live below your means, suck it up, get rid of that car loan, get the cheap car, live in the smaller unit. Do what you got to do to make that gap so you can save that money. See, it's Dave Ramsey says this a lot, like, sacrifice. I can't remember the exact words he says. Like, live like nobody, live like no other. So later you can live like no other.
Yeah.
So sacrificing short term for the long term goals.
Yeah. And there's a few ways. I think there's two ways you can kind of manage this. If you're making $100,000 a year or more, I would probably use like what Jim Rohn says is like the 70-30 principle. 70% of your money you live on, the other 30% you break into like 3 groups, like investing, maybe some random projects that you can try to turn it into more money, and you donate some money or whatever, however you want to do that. That's his kind of rules. But live on 70%, invest the rest, and that way you're paying yourself back. If you're not making $100,000 a year, this is my personal opinion, and you want to get into investing, you're just not going to be able to do it in the current circumstance. You don't make enough money to like live and invest.
But even if you start reading, you can learn how to make more money.
You're going to have to make more money. Yeah, you're going to have to create a side hustle. You're going to have to figure out another way to start bringing in some income, whether it's renting a car out. You got to figure something out. There's an infinite ways to make money, and so
especially these days.
Yes, find a hustle that's going to get you up to that $100,000 a year. That way you can start investing, and then ultimately, obviously, you want to get your investments to make enough money to be $100,000 a year, right?
And then you've got talking about leveraging time or people. If you're making $50 an hour, you're making $500 an hour. There's only so many hours in a week.
Yeah.
So you're doing 40. You're a doctor. You're making, say, even 100 an hour. There's 40 hours in a week. You're still capped at $4,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good money, but you're capped and you're working your butt off.
Well, let's
every
talk
week
about
for that.
leveraging people, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting.
So
at.
the next, that would be basically, let's say, for example, you're getting kind of busy. Let's say you're up to 10 short-term rentals, right? And you're finding yourself just you're always on the phone. You're not having enough time to go and find another deal. You're kind of dealing with the repairmen and the cleaners.
You're stuck in your business.
All of a sudden, you're getting stuck in your business because you're realizing that it's starting to kind of overtake, and it's taking up more time because you got more properties. So at that point, that's a good time to say, okay, I'm making $25,000 a month. Can I hire somebody for $5,000 a month to give me time back?
Yeah.
Right? Now all of a sudden, you're going to hire somebody and paying them $5,000 a month to do all that work, basically, that you were doing. They're going to take over managing those rentals, and now you got all that time back. You don't do nothing.
But
you
literally,
you still make $20,000 a month, but now you are not using any of your time. Now you're leveraging that person to get all your time back.
Yeah.
And now I can go find more deals, right? And I can probably still give more deals to that person to deal with, right? Because now they're going to be wanting more hours. So if I get them up to $6,000, $7,000 a month, whatever, and then we eventually get them up to 20 properties, for example.
It's unlimited, 10. Right?
Yeah, it's unlimited. But now you're leveraging that time, and you're leveraging money.
And that's a big thing that comes to mind. There's a lot of people out there who are a photographer, a videographer, a personal trainer, somebody who's got a skill set, who likes the business knowledge, they like the motivation. They're good at what they do. They want the work, but they don't want to do the business side of it. So if I'm a personal trainer and I've got clients, I'm like, okay, I don't want to take on any more clients, or I don't want to do any clients anymore. You're a personal trainer. Hey, Ray, I'm going to pay you X amount. I'm going to take X amount. You don't have to worry about getting clients.
Yeah.
They're going to be given to you. I can do that once. I can do that 10. I can do it 50-fold. The more I leverage that, the more money I make by just overseeing the umbrella, right? Yeah. That's just personal training. You can do a videography. You can do it with anything. But it's having the business skills, the motivation, reading the books, having the knowledge, doing the marketing to build that umbrella so you can start outsourcing.
100%. What you're basically starting to do is you're saying, okay, I can either own a grape because that's all the time I have, or I can own 1/4 of a watermelon, right? And I'm just going to give everyone else the rest.
Yeah.
But you're still getting a bigger piece of the pie. You're just not owning the whole thing, right? So that's leveraging. because now you get all this time back and you're still making more money without having to do as much.
You wake up in the morning and you don't go to work, but you're making money here, here, and here. And that's just one business in one form of income.
Yeah.
You can then do it 10 different ways, and then you got all your it just keeps stacking on, doesn't it?
Like the messages I keep getting on my phone that are on my watch that have been coming through, those were bookings that are just popping through, and I'm sitting here talking to you and
having fun doing what you love, but making money at the same time, right?
So that's really the whole leveraging, money and people. And I would say that's leveraging time as well, because now,
I was gonna say, I feel like they kind of fit into each other.
Yeah, they kind of work together a little bit. Sometimes you could probably separate them a little bit, but like leveraging time also would be like if there's a new machine that comes along that can make you, might cost you 10 grand up front, but it's going to save you so much time, right? Those are things too that are important.
So a big thing for reading for me too, it's not just the business side, it's also on the health side. So like fasting, we both do fasting, right?
Yep.
We may have heard that from someone, we may have read that for someone, but you hear about something and you now have the ability, you kind of have the mindset to dig deeper, to start critically thinking, to start questioning things, to start asking questions, and then doing it for yourself. So I'm a big believer, like there's no perfect diet, there's no perfect anything for anybody, but the more you read, the more knowledge you get, the more understanding you get, the more options you've got for you, and the more tools you've got in your tool belts. Can you kind of relate to that?
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And sometimes things just change, and maybe what you've been doing for a while just isn't working the same anymore. Like your body tends to adapt, I think, to whatever you got going on. So sometimes I think changing it up isn't a bad thing necessarily, I just think it's our bodies were built for survival, and so it's really hard to kind of gauge what's just going to work forever. I don't think it's black and white for everybody either.
Yeah.
I think everyone's got their own things and blood types and DNA and all kinds of stuff. But I think there is some kind of general stuff that works for everybody, and I think as long as you're sticking to that kind of core stuff, like, more protein, less carbs, like all those things.
Even the ability to build habits, right?
Yes.
Like reading teaches you to build habits.
Yeah, it does.
Reading teaches you to write down goals. A, to set goals. B, to write down goals. C, to read your goals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not, is that weight loss? Is that business? It teaches you the basics of so much else.
Yeah.
And then like for me, I've got habits where I do fasting every day. I take cold showers every day. I use the sauna on a consistent basis. Then these are things I've read, these are things I've looked into, things I've inside out, where I feel like I've learned it well enough so I can teach it. And now it's developing habits, setting goals. Why am I doing this?
I mean, you can even look at it as, when you're traveling across the ocean before we had GPS and everything like that, do you think that the captain of the ship just looked up once in a while at the stars to like make sure they're going the right direction? Or did he have a habit of just going out there all the time and make sure they're going the right way, right? And I think life is like that. Like you always kind of have to wake up, because you can get swept away in so many different directions, especially if you have family, you have kids. You can get swept away in all the different directions. You kind of always have to keep looking up at the stars and figure out, like, am I going the right way? Do I need to set the sails a different, where are we heading exactly? Like, you kind of always need to do that. And if you can create a habit of that, and that's what your habits do, right? They kind of keep you on track.
Yeah.
And if you fall off track, you depending how far you fall off track, right?
Yeah.
That's how much longer it's going to take you to get to that goal. So it's really important to just keep looking at where you're at and keep on track.
And a big thing being like your environment is everything. Your 5 closest friends, your biggest influence.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you don't have access to the right people, like right now you're working a normal job, you want to get into a business, you want to start making more money, you want to get healthier, but you don't have the right people around you, nor can you find them. Books is your best bet.
Books is a great place to start.
Because you're learning from the best. You pick up Elon Musk's book.
Yeah.
You can pick up Richard Branson's book.
Richard Branson, yeah.
You can learn from literally the best people in the world. You can find the best people on health, nutrition, and learn directly from them. You don't need to find someone like yourself. I mean, and I find the more you read, the more you become that person, and you attract more people who are like that.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that. And then also too, not everybody needs to sit down and read a book. That's not for me. For me, I don't really make time to sit down and physically read a book. Therefore, I do Audible, I do audiobooks. You're on the same page, right, for the most part?
I do a lot of audiobooks.
You actually read too, though, don't you?
I do enjoy, like, but that feels more like personal time, like my own, like just sitting there with a book. It's just so, like, it's personal time. It's nice.
Which is cool. I couldn't tell you last time I actually sat down and read a book.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be years.
Yeah.
But every time I'm in the car, every time I'm at the gym, I would say an average to 3 to 4 hours a day, I've got audiobook in my ears.
Yeah.
And that's, you're looking like 28 hours a week just listening.
You've probably have like 2 doctorates in different types of subjects.
And that's, Brian Tracy says that.
Yeah.
Have you heard him say that? He goes, every time you're in a car, if you put an audiobook on, every 2 years it's like doing a degree at university.
Yeah.
But the beauty is you're learning about what you want to learn about for you.
Yeah.
So like, hey, I'm not really good at sales. I need to get better at sales. You can pick up 10 sales books, read them.
That's
real
what
estate.
Universities used to be.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's how they originally started. Like these big libraries, back in ancient times, medieval times, you didn't get dropped off there to like learn a subject. You were like, I want to learn about this. You would go and just study it until you kind of studied everything you could,
Until you knew it,
and
right?
Then when people had questions about, astrology, they'd go to you, like, so.
You're not getting told what you need to learn.
Yes.
I will literally
that all changed in the industrial age.
Oh, gotcha.
When all those machines, they needed more employees, right? These companies were growing really big to have thousands of employees, and they needed people to run the machines. They couldn't just have Joe Schmo, just jump in and work on some technology he's never seen in his life. So they needed people to go to school to learn these skills, to learn how to become managers, to learn. So basically, if you think about school system now, it was all kind of built on the foundation of creating employees to work at factories.
100%.
So if
it still is, isn't it?
It still is. Yes, it still is for the most part.
To fit into society.
Yeah, I mean, if you eventually want to break off and you want to be an attorney or a doctor, then school's the right path, right?
Absolutely.
Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, I wouldn't want to go to some guy who's never even read a book on human anatomy, right?
Yeah.
So, like...
But like you said, a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist.
Correct.
But it's pretty. But if you want to, yeah. And I saw something recently in America, opposed to Australia. There's so much more pressure to go to college. It's absolutely crazy. Like if you don't go to college here, I feel like you're looked down upon. Hey, he's stupid. He should have gone to college. But most people don't realize that most people drop. Like over 50% of people drop out of college.
I think that's going away a little bit. I think with like people.
I think
our
with
age,
social media, I think it's helping.
Social media. I think people our age who already discovered like, hey, it's really not the end all be all, right? I think that's going to kind of fizzle out a little bit, and then the school system is going to have to go through its changes, and it will have to go through a revamping process, because I still think school's important. You know what I mean? I don't think that you necessarily need to go to college, but I do think going through maybe up through high school is a pretty important time to learn some basic skills.
Absolutely.
Like, you got to learn how to communicate properly, learn language properly, because it's our point of reference, right? Like if we all learn our own language, well, we're gonna have a hard time communicating, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's important, and learning how to read and write, like those little basic skills, and learning some basic math is important. Other than that, I think it's kind of going to be up to like, where do you want to go next? What do you want to do?
Yeah, knowing that you don't have to go this path. There is another way.
There is.
And then by picking up a book on that subject and reading enough of them, you become an expert at that. And YouTube being a huge one. I couldn't tell you how many skills I've learned from YouTube, because I'll just dive in, immerse myself with it until I can start teaching it.
Yeah.
If I can't teach it, I don't know it. It's the way I look at something.
Yeah.
If I stutter, if I can't get it out properly, I don't know it. I know I don't know it. I need to get in and learn more.
Yep.
So yeah, that's kind of our take on self-education, right?
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, if you haven't picked up a book by now, we highly suggest number one book you say to someone pick up.
It depends on whatever interests you.
What about just to awaken someone, to kind of
curiosity, to awaken someone?
Just to break their mindset.
I think if you feel like you don't have the abundance in money that you want to have, read Rich Dad Poor Dad. That would be a great place to start. And then there's so many different paths to go from there, from real estate investing to understanding, you can buy businesses. You don't even have to start your own business. And it sounds way crazier than what it is. It's not that complicated to buy a business. It does take some learning, just like anything else, just like driving a car. I'm sure at some point,
That's the thing, right?
You
no
didn't
one knew
learn
how to drive a car.
Yeah, you didn't learn how to walk. You weren't just born knowing how to walk, and I always think about that too, and I use that as an example. Like, if is there a kid out there that you know that just quit and just said, this is too hard, I'm not going to learn how to walk?
Yeah, that's...
He just kept doing it until he eventually did it.
Figured it out.
Some kids took a year, some kids, were 2, some kids were 6 months, some kids were, you know what I mean?
It just seems like as we get older, we
eventually they did it.
Yeah, but it seems as we get older, we're like, oh, it's too hard. I could fail. I could make a mistake.
No one wants to be uncomfortable. That's what it is.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings is being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I feel like that literally represents entrepreneur. Being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Or you're just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Because you're not pushed out of your comfort zone, you're not growing.
You're not growing, you're not stretching.
If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning.
Yeah. And when you start getting comfortable, you start getting complacent, and then, I feel like you start going the opposite direction. Like, I really do think in life, you're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. You're never, you don't just sit there on cruise control and on idle.
That's why I would say fitness too. You're either gaining weight or you're losing weight.
Yeah.
You're
getting stronger, you're getting more fit, or you're getting less fit.
You're never just cruising. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. It might feel like that for a couple months.
I wish it did. Yeah. I'd love to just be able to...
I'm good for now.
Yeah.
But I got to.
You can't do that.
I got to level 5. We're done. Push save. Let's go.
And then for me, Rich Dad Poor Dad 2, I would highly recommend probably being the first book to read.
Yes, and I say that mostly because I do think people have a lot of misconceptions and a lot of confusion on what it really means to make money and leverage.
Even
and
just breaking your mindset, right?
Yeah.
That you got to go to school and get good grades to get a good job.
Yeah, if you're depressed and you feel really unhappy, I think maybe No Death, No Fear from Thich Nhat Hanh is a good one.
I'm gonna have to read that.
Yeah, that one's goes a little bit just deeper on just on real on life, what when it comes down to it. Like you said, money doesn't really mean anything. I agree with that. It's true. It doesn't really mean anything, but it does mean a lot when you're trying to live in society, right? So if you're not going to live in society and you're going to go and have a 1-acre farm in some area and grow your own food and just completely live isolated on your own, then money doesn't mean anything. You're going to base your existence off of something totally different. But if you're going to be part of this society, and you're going to try and contribute and share and help other people and do all that stuff, well, you're going to have to make money because you're going to have to figure out how to live here.
And also just that self-awareness, what are you good at, what are you passionate? There's a saying I always like to say to people: if you suddenly tomorrow inherited $100 million, and you buy your car, you buy your house, you travel the world, you buy your parents the house, you still got ton of money left and you got nothing but time. What are you going to do? And I feel like whatever you're going to do is your true calling and what you should be doing. So for me personally, I'd have a camera in my hand, I'd have a drone in my hand, I'd be traveling the world, I'd be documenting, I'd be creating, and it's pretty much what I do now for a living. So, and I'd also be doing a podcast. So I know that is my calling. That is what I'm meant to do. Whereas you, what would your
I
thing
would
be?
I would probably be cruising around helping people and teaching.
What type of teaching?
All this stuff. Everything that we're talking about.
Trying to help
now.
other people, right?
Just trying to help other people. I think everyone just needs a different type of help necessarily, and sometimes people just need you to share, and that sometimes is enough. I mean, I don't think you can't force people to grow or anything like that, but I do think you can at least plant some seeds, and maybe one day
seeds being a good one, right?
One day something will grow and they'll be like, that makes sense, like what that guy said to me 10 years ago, and then all of a sudden they're just in a different direction, right? They just adjust their sails and they're sailing another way, and that's great. That would be awesome.
Love that. I think we should do this more often. Have a little chat and share some ideas.
Maybe I would love to talk, and maybe we should just start reading a book we both haven't read, and then just come back and
a little book club Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights, and
we could just talk about
if you haven't read that, read that. Oh my god,
that is a great book.
He recommended that. I read it in 2 days. That was one of the best books I've read.
Cool.
All right, thanks for being on, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome, man.